everybody. I'm Tyler Trumbauer with Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. Thank you all for tuning in here today as we're getting set for another episode of our week-long video podcast series. We are honored to be joined today here for Elisha Elliott Leavy, who is a clinical social worker at the Regional Burn Center with the Lehigh Valley Health Network. Elisha, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And, so we just each day as throughout this week, we want to just kind of dive into different individuals' lives and their careers and what they do, on the front lines to, help promote fire and life safety and kind of really what they see through their perspective, as everyone has a part to play in this effort to try to, promote safety, fire safety, and just being educated on all fronts. And I think your perspective is something super interesting just because, you're at the Lehigh Valley Health Network Regional Burn Center. It's one of the best in the nation, one of their most comprehensive. And, it's honestly one of the highest ranked regionally as well. And all about the accolades. So, for us who's based in the Lehigh Valley here at Kistler O'Brien, and a lot of our customers are in the greater Lehigh Valley area as well, what makes LVHN's Regional Burn Center as great as it is?
Well, first, I would say the people. I think we have an amazing team, and our commitment to burn care is evidenced particularly by the fact that we are an American Burn Association verified center, actually in both adult and pediatric care since 2005. It's an international mark of distinction globally among burn centers, so we're very proud, to hold that distinction. Verification criteria includes all aspects of burn treatment, so it's not just the medical care, it's that we provide the highest quality of medical care possible, but also follow-up care and treatment, scar treatment. We also address the psychosocial issues and needs. So we look to both burn prevention, treatment of the care when people come in for the injuries that they sustain, but also for many years afterwards, so that we are all encompassing in our care for our patients. We're also a magnet designated hospital, which is something only about 7% of the hospitals across the nation reach, so that we are dedicated to providing excellent nursing care. Our surgeons, we have 3 burn surgeons who are dedicated, along with our medical team, to employing the most top-notch surgical interventions. We try to minimize pain as much as possible. We have advanced modern surgical techniques to reduce the amount and times that dressing changes are needed to reduce pain. We also have state-of-the-art infection control in place, especially now in COVID. People worry about that, but we have all of those things taken care of to make sure that we are providing excellent care across the board. We even have something called the teleburn program. So we actually can assess and support patients before they ever come to us. They come into outside hospital centers who are not equipped to deal with burns. They have ways of accessing our surgeons and getting support before they even arrive, which is really quite cool. And then through our Kunske Burn Recovery Center, we also offer scar management and reconstruction when needed. So it's not just those immediate, hours and days after an injury occurs. We have people with us for many years. We're here not to just save people's lives right after they're injured. Like I said, with the psychosocial care, which is a big part of the American Burn Association's verification process, we support not just the patients, but their families. We see everybody as a survivor. And I personally provide emotional support and counseling both inpatient and through our outpatient burn recovery center. We have a burn survivor support group. We have various programs that we offer through the year to foster community and connection. So really, our commitment to the community, to our burn patients and their families, is all encompassing.
Great. Wow. Yeah. And that's a pretty good list to kind of sum up for comprehensive. And you're right. And I think that's a big reason why it is, gets the recognition and the accolades that it does. So now something that means a lot to Kistler O'Brien as well as the LVHN's Balls of Fire Dodgeball Tournament. I think we're still looking for that elusive victory. But it's something that's a great experience for us with KOB. We're happy to, be a part of that event each and every year. You've kind of taken over the organization and all the efforts surrounding that. So, if you could kind of shed some light on your thoughts of that event, how it's been kind of organizing it, and how much do you miss not having that here in 2020?
Oh, how much do I miss it? Can I show you the trophy that whenever the year comes, that we can do
Yes.
this.
That would look great in the Kistler O'Brien offices.
It would look wonderful, and you'll get there. 2 teams, you will get there. It was quite overwhelming. It remains overwhelming, but in the most positive possible way. It was in place for 8 years before I stepped into my role, so I'd never done fundraising before. It's a tremendous event, and having never done that, you sort of, you go to an event, you have, a nice fundraising day, you see how much fun it is, like, oh, this is great. It is not evident at all how much work goes into it. So having never done that work before and stepping into that role, I got an even greater appreciation for people that do that, but also just what goes into helping, provide funds and supporting our programs. You sort of think, oh, it's just part of the hospital, but we actually have to raise our own money for our burn survivor support group, programs. So that's where the Great Balls of Fire is actually our primary source of funds. And what I would like people to know about it is that because of that, everything we do, all the monies that we raise helps us to do all of the other programs that we are able to provide. So besides being an amazing amount of fun and fostering a wonderful competition amongst our local community members, and Kistler O'Brien will definitely, I'm sure you will get there very soon. It's just been a great honor to work with everybody that's been able to run this.
Yeah, we're going to start setting up weekly practices soon in preparation for whenever it returns down the line. So, you talk about funds and fundraising and trying to, you have to worry about those efforts yourself. Can you talk a little bit more about what is the McCormick Fund, and if people are looking to help support it, how can they do that without the absence, of the dodgeball tournament and just supporting it in general?
Yeah, absolutely. The McCormick Fund was developed to support our survivor program. So of course, all the medical things that people need in the burn center, that's all taken care of. But our burn survivor support group, helping out with our annual holiday party, even the dodgeball tournament itself, that costs a little bit of money. But most importantly, probably the biggest thing that we try to do with our funds is each year to send survivors and their families and some staff to the Phoenix Society's World Burn Congress, which is held in a different city each year. This year, of course, it's virtual, but we try to, that money we use is for scholarships for people to be able to attend, which is a gathering. When we went last year, I think there was over 2,000 people at this survival. It's amazing, just absolutely amazing and life-changing for many people. So our hope is to be able to, support people in a variety of different ways. If people would like to contribute, that's something that can be done at any time of the year, not just with dodgeball. You can actually donate through our Office of Philanthropy here at LVHN. So we even have a simple website, give.lvhn.org. If you go there, you have to do, a couple of quick, hoops to jump through to get through the page, and it actually has the Lehigh Valley Burn Center on there, which is great. Of course, we are a nonprofit agency, so all donations are tax deductible, and you will receive an acknowledgement of your generosity from LVHN directly. It can be done on the website. You can even connect with me, people send checks in the mail, and I make sure it gets there. And the nice part too is, because of the way everything is done, everything that we get goes directly to our community. None of it is like spent on things that aren't relevant to what we do. Mm-hmm. So everything we raise, we get to use for good use.
Great. No, it's good to hear, and appreciate you laying that out, and that web address I don't think could be much easier, like you said. So we encourage people to, if they can, go there and support the fund and as much as possible. So now let's get in a little bit kind of the treatment side of things and burns and that's something that also intrigues me about this conversation with you, kind of seeing what you guys see coming through there. As you may get some, like you talked about in the beginning of our conversation, that other hospitals or facilities can't treat, can come to you. So my guess is you may see some of the more severe cases in the greater area as well. But what are the most common burns you treat and really the causes of those burns?
Sure. Yeah, we do see a wide range from smaller burns usually go to the outpatient center, but we do, unfortunately, we do a great job treating them, but we can get very large burns. The most common ones that we see tend to be thermal or flame burns. So house fires, bonfires, burning brush. One of the most common reasons that we see people involved with those is unfortunately when they add an accelerant, like gasoline or propane. It is very common, especially in Pennsylvania. We serve, a good portion of the state. There's a lot of rural areas around, so it is not uncommon for us to see that. It's summertime now. People are on bonfires. They might have had a couple of drinks. Accidents happen. So those are very common for us to see. really do not recommend using accelerants. That's one of, if I could do one of those, the more you know PSAs, that would definitely be one of them. Also with thermal burns or flame burns, you'd see it could be touching a hot surface. So something like putting your hand on a stove top, being up against a radiator, not realizing how hot it was, being against the muffler of a motorcycle, that can be a common one. And don't forget about cold. With thermal burns, it's also the other side. So every winter we were treating frostbite. Sometimes that can be very serious. For pediatric patients, scalds are usually the most common type. So unfortunately, pulling down, ramen noodles or a cup of soup or hot coffee on them. And unfortunately, that's a lot of the causes for the kiddos. And unfortunately, too, many people do not realize about their hot water heater settings. They're recommended to never be set over 120 degrees, but my understanding is most manufacturers actually set them to about 140. And so folks never think about it. A child's skin is much more vulnerable and delicate than an adult's. It only takes a couple of seconds to have a really serious burn, which is rough. And then we also treat traumatic accidents. So fires that result from a car accident, explosions, road rash from motorcycles. So it presents similarly and it's treated similarly to a burn. We also treat electrical and chemical injuries, so people that might work on a power line where they spill chemical cleaners on themselves. And we even treat snake bites, believe it or not.
All right. Yeah, definitely. So you talked a little bit about the different scenarios and examples there. Summer's winding down. Summer, holidays, fireworks. We hear stories all the time about that. You hear them and then also see them before they become stories. You see the actual situation unfolding. What do you see on the front lines when it comes to injuries stemming from fireworks, and what would be your message to those who use them to try to do it as safe as possible?
Believe it or not, most of those injuries tend to go to the trauma service, because you can imagine an explosion happening in close proximity to your body. Your injuries are often very significant bodily trauma. We tend to provide the care for the more burn primary, which does happen if the clothes catch fire, if there's a fire resulting from that. But if you've lost an eye or part of a hand, they tend to go to trauma. But we will work together with them. Sometimes we are all working together to help people. So we definitely come together as two different teams. And as far as my message for them, ideally, I would say leave it to the professionals. If you do choose to light fireworks, they're legal here. So if you choose to do that, please follow the laws of your jurisdiction. Only have an adult use them, please. Only an adult. Have children at a safe distance away. I would really encourage anyone to avoid using mind-altering substances prior to using a firework. Unfortunately, alcohol and other drugs are often something we see common in a lot of fires, and especially accidents like this. So just be mindful of what you're doing to be safe. If you do use the fireworks, make sure any remnants left over are soaked in water before they're thrown away to avoid causing a fire in the garbage. Never throw a dud firework into like a bonfire or another fire. Always follow the instructions on the package, and you would also want to avoid, if it's a dry day, don't use them to reduce the risk of a wildfire.
All great things to keep in mind. We just had several holidays over the last couple of months that normally are popular for firework usage, and to keep in mind moving forward. So you kind of touched on this earlier about all the different treatments and options that you have to kind of survey the burns and how to differently help the different patients. But if someone does sustain a mild to moderate burn injury, what are the first steps they should do at home to treat it? Maybe it's that virtual, kind of consultation that is the next step. But what is that initial first step after someone may suffer a burn injury?
All right. Well, stop, drop and roll, cool, and call 911 are the first things that anyone wants to keep in mind if their clothing or self is on fire. The most important step in general for burn care is to stop the heat, stop the burning process itself. So removing any clothing or jewelry that could retain heat up against the skin is very important. This is really important when it comes to little ones, to toddlers and babies who wear diapers. One of the things we tend to see, like I mentioned, it's scald injuries. It's often they accidentally pull down something on top of them. The liquid goes down their chest. If it goes into their diaper, unfortunately, that diaper is keeping the moisture and the heat up against their skin. So you want to make sure, get the clothing off, stop the heating process. What we don't want people to do is, once they've stopped that, is to, sometimes we'll see people wrapping like a cold wrap around the wounds. We don't want that, because that can actually cause hypothermia. Don't put ice on it. You might think, oh, the opposite of the heat is the cold, but that can actually cause a thermal injury or something else that we don't want to see. And sometimes we'll also see where people sort of do like a home remedy or something that's been passed down. They'll put butter or mayonnaise or egg whites or toothpaste on on an injury, and that's really something we don't want to see for a couple of reasons. Anything like butter, which is oil and grease based, can actually retain heat. You're also introducing contaminants into a wound, which causes more problems later. The best thing to do, go to the ER or your urgent care if you don't think it's a super big burn. What I will say is that this is definitely a time to play it safe and not sorry, because burns are very dynamic. They can change. And even if you think it's not much, I mean, we've all gotten little blisters on our hands. That's probably okay. But if it's something more, a little bit more than what you're used to seeing, I would definitely get treatment for it. And especially if it's a child, even if it is a minor burn, you don't want to wait. Go to their pediatrician, go to an urgent care. And if you need to, they'll recommend you to come to our burn recovery center, which we would, encourage you. If they recommend you, please do it.
Noted. Yeah, definitely not something that you want to wait a few days or wait some time on and see what it does on its own. It's something that you need to treat immediately right then and there. So, Elisha, we're having this conversation in honor of, National Fire Prevention Week. It's a special week at Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. We're having a lot of, virtual events and things like this podcast series to try to build awareness and do different things surrounding National Fire Prevention Week. But what does it mean to you and to your team, at the LVHN Regional Burn Center?
Yeah, I think it is an incredibly important time to reflect on the ways that we can keep our homes and our communities and our children safe. The terrific works, that Kistler O'Brien, that you're doing, that other allies of ours, like the Burn Prevention Network, to get out there into schools and communities and to remind people, hey, it's some little small steps that you take every year, every 6 months, that can make a huge difference. If unfortunately a fire breaks out, if you're prepared, if your smoke detectors are working, if you have a working fire extinguisher, an appropriate kind in the home, we can prevent tragedies. We see tragedies, we see these every day, and to know that some small steps that we can all take help to, prevent those things is important. Unfortunately, a lot of things that happen that we see are preventable, actually, injuries and accidents. Sometimes it's beyond our control, but if we have ways to try to address that, I think it's super important. And I got to say, it's always a proud moment when I'm talking with a patient, a survivor, and they say, something happened, they caught fire, like, but I remembered, I stopped, drop, and rolled. You learn that as a little kid, that stuff sticks with you, and it's incredibly important. So getting that awareness out there, being that, reminder that you are in the community, like, hey, change the batteries twice a year, that can save a life. It's very important.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing how those simple things then you learn when you're younger, you think you may never use, you may never be in that situation, like stop, drop, and roll, just immediately comes back to you in that moment in that time of need to allow you to make those corrective, steps and actions. So that is something good to hear as well, that is something that is still in the back of everyone's mind when they need it as well. So now, obviously, we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic that we talked about, the dodgeball tournament, and that being one of the casualties of the coronavirus with trying to social distance and everything here in 2020. What have you seen at your facility during this coronavirus pandemic? Obviously, it's affecting everybody in the medical industry differently, some more than others. But have you seen an uptick in burn injuries or patients coming through your facility with people being home more? Or has it gone down since maybe people aren't going to as many parties or large events? What have you seen specifically at your facility?
I would say initially, when everything kind of started happening and the shutdowns were happening, we actually saw a decrease in patients, which was great. We were wondering if we might see an increase. That lasted for a little while. And then I think as people kind of adjusted and started getting a little bit, frustrated with being home, especially as the weather started to warm, we saw people getting back to their more typical routines and the usual stuff. So as the summer's gone on, we've seen the bonfires, we've seen the brush fires. So we've kind of got back to, the roller coaster of census. Sometimes we have peaks and then we have valleys. I would say, like it has been with most hospitals, now that things are, with the the lockdown, kind of walking it back and being in better phases. We're kind of getting back to more normal. Although right now we have a lower census, which is wonderful. We're a place you don't really want to be busy.
Right,
we
right.
And there's still, so we're hoping people are still social distancing, but yeah, we're still seeing house fires and car accidents. We've had quite a few of those this summer. But yeah, I think that the reduction didn't last too long, but we're here, we're open. You've got a world-class burn center in your own backyard. We're here if people need us.
Right, exactly. And something to kind of build on that as well, as we saw, especially early on in the pandemic, is maybe folks a little apprehensive to seek medical attention if they weren't seeing a doctor for coronavirus related symptoms. How has your facility been handling that when you have patients coming in with, safety and health precautions in place? How has that been? Obviously, like we talked earlier, this is with a burn, you don't want to wait. It's not something you want to push off. It's not an elective medical situation. It's an immediate need. But what has the folks at your facility been doing to try to, make it as safe as possible to, prevent coronavirus spread while also treating an urgent need?
Yeah, I personally think LVHN has done an amazing job. I've been impressed along every step of the way of what we've done initially, really closing down nothing elective, only emergent. I wash my hands so much. We all do. We're all, lotion is important. We're constantly taking every precaution possible, and it's beyond even what we kind of do, just to see the entire facility and the entire organization, how seriously they have taken this. So we've been able to open back up. So even throughout this process, just the nature of what we do, being an ICU and a burn treatment center, we're already very, very cautious about clinical cleanliness and spreading infection and stopping that. So for us, it wasn't a huge change. It's just more making people aware of, hey, these are the many steps that we take. We screen all patients, throughout the hospital. Of course, anyone that walks in our doors gets a temperature check. They do the COVID screening questions. We encourage people not to come. If they're experiencing any symptoms, if they're experiencing symptoms and they have a significant burn, you still come in. We're going to take all the precautions to help people. We, of course, all wear face masks. I'm by myself in my office, so I don't have to do that now. But as soon as I step out, the face mask is on. We are constantly cleaning everything, washing hands, wiping everything down with bactericidal and virucidal things. So we keep it's a very clean environment. We only have the amount of patients necessary. We try to maintain 6 feet distances, even with masks on. We have PPE for, of course, the inpatient side. It's even greater than the outpatient. So we do, I think, every possible thing you can, and I think we've done an excellent job.
Great to hear. And I just thought that was a little additional kind of note to put on as we talked about it affecting every sector of the medical industry, and specifically in those that maybe aren't treating coronavirus in particular, but that's also still affecting in one way or another. So, well, I appreciate the time today, Elisha. We really appreciate your insight and your knowledge from your perspective, we honor to help us honor National Fire Prevention Week, and some great insight. So we really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, Tyler.
Thank you. And again, that was Elisha Elliott Leavy, a clinical social worker from the Lehigh Valley Health Network Regional Burn Center. And that was another episode of Kistler O'Brien's National Fire Prevention Week podcast this week. We thank you for tuning in for today's episode. And if you missed any of the previous ones or want to check out the rest that we have coming up, be sure to check our YouTube channel, Kistler O'Brien Fire Protection. Talk to you then.